Hi, this is David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I've got Bill Moore, our founder and chief editor, in the studio with us today. And he's got something interesting we want to talk about today. We want to talk about electric aviation. So
Oh,
I've
my
seen,
favorite.
yeah, I've been seeing you've been, emailing these leaders of various flight schools and other people, the manufacturer. So you want to tell us a little bit of what's going on with Pipistrel?
Okay, so Pipistrel is I think a Slovenia based aircraft manufacturer, and they make piston aircraft and sailed plane type of aircraft. They have gotten probably 5-6 years ago or more, they got into building electric powered aircraft, and that aircraft is a two-seat side by side, something if pilots are familiar with the Cessna 150, it's a lot like the Cessna 150, but it's all electric. Now they do have a gasoline version that runs, I think it's a Rotex engine, but the one that we're interested in, yeah, there it is, and they really make some beautiful airplanes. I mean, they're just gorgeous. So the Pipistrel Electro is the one you see there on the right of that photograph. That aircraft has been up until now, because it's considered an experimental type aircraft. A private person can buy that thing, but you can't really use it for pilot training or anything like that until this week, or maybe it was late last week, whenever the FAA made the announcement. So this particular aircraft is designed to provide training for initial introductory training for pilots, basically around the airport. Whereas the gasoline version, you could probably fly 300, 400 miles with it. This aircraft, you're gonna be hard pressed to get outside of a range of roughly 100 miles because of the battery. The battery is a 24 kilowatt hour battery, which is the same size battery that's in my Fiat 500e. So it's not a cross, just like my Fiat is not a cross country car. The Pipistrel Electro is not a cross country airplane, but it is ideal for introductory pilot training. Flying and doing what we call, touch and go, where you line up and, you land and you just get that, because as you know, the most dangerous part of any flight is takeoff and landing. And
Right.
so that's where you really need to hone your skills, is to get that down. The beauty here is, because this is electric, you can fly this airplane, I guess I could say literally, figuratively, whatever, for pennies, compared to a Cessna 150, where the fuel is $5-6, depending on where you're at, a gallon, and it'll cost an hour's worth of flying. These are current rates. An hour's worth of flying in that airplane is $65 an hour
For fuel.
Well, that's what we call wet. So that's the rental of the airplane with the fuel in the airplane. The fuel is going right now is around $6 a gallon, depending on obviously where you are. Some FBOs will charge you more, some will charge a little less. But this airplane literally flies on pennies worth of electricity. So, you figure that that 24 kilowatt hour battery is equivalent, in terms of electrical energy, is equivalent to about 2/3
57
of
horsepower.
gasoline, 2/3 of a gallon of gasoline, whereas
Okay.
that Cessna 150 is going to burn somewhere between 6 and 8, 9 gallons an hour. So,
Yeah.
So to go out and fly for an hour, shoot what we call, shooting the pattern, making takeoff and, landing and touch and goes and that kind of thing, that Cessna 150 is going to cost you $65. And you just figure up the fuel figure. It's burning seven, if you're frugally, you're burning, let's say $7, or seven gallons in that hour. And you multiply that by let's say the $5, you got $35 just in fuel. But to fly that same hour, and I get my electric gas tank is 2/3 of a gallon, I'm running for about $3 an hour for fuel. So you compare that to $35 for the fuel as opposed to $3 for the fuel. Which of those do you want to be training in and paying your money for to become a pilot? Well, I know
Yeah, that's sure saving a lot of money. That's for sure.
you're saving a lot of money. Of course, that fuel doesn't have to be pumped out of the ground. It can come right from the sunshine over your head, right?
Yeah. Now,
Or from a nuclear power plant down the river from you. But that being said, up until this point, it's been classified by the Federal Aviation Agency as an experimental aircraft. So you could buy one of these, you could, take it and fly it to your heart's content. You just can't make any money from it. So flight school could have it there to sort of, well, let's take you up on a demonstration flight and we'll show what it's like being a pilot. I mean, a lot of flight schools will do that. Just come out and fly for free and we'll show you what flying is like. You could do that. You just couldn't, you couldn't charge for the lessons. You couldn't generate any revenues from it. The FAA just days ago issued a waiver to that experimental certificate, what we call a light sport aircraft, that now allow flight schools to use this to train pilots. And go ahead.
What was the price of this aircraft? It was a little over $200,000.
Yeah, it's a little over $200,000, depending on whatever the other options you might want. There are all kinds. Some of the biggest expense on these aircraft is frankly what's in the panel. It's the stuff, the instruments and other communication gear and computers and nav systems and all that go in it. That can run a significant amount of money. And then, of course, obviously, it's going to be the battery and then the airframe. But yeah, so it's around 200, I think 210, something like that, $1,000 for it, which is comparable to a Cessna 172 and that class of aircraft. So price-wise, they're comparable. The operating cost is just a fraction, and because of that, I am a licensed pilot, because once you get your pilot's license, it's always good. It's just not necessary. It doesn't allow you to fly because you have to have periodic, medical examinations and refreshers and things like that. So it's like, if I were a doctor, well, I'm always a doctor because I got my medical license, but it has to be kept current. And so I'm not a current pilot, but I still have a love for it. As you can tell behind me, above my head, there's a couple of models of commercial short range, short haul aircraft. So, and then I did work for an airline for a period of time. Not in a mini pilot capacity, more in customer service. So I'm wanting to figure out how we can bring electric flight to here in Omaha and start introducing these young students to flying, but do it in a way that's affordable. Because right now it'll cost you $100,000 to get a commercial pilot's license, to multi-engine, with instrument flight, IFR, all that kind of stuff. So it's $100,000, which is just, you want to become a doctor, you want to become a pilot, take your pick. They're both going to run about the same. So
yeah, well, it's something interesting because it's probably going to shave $20,000-$30,000 off the cost of getting all your flights out of the way.
Especially if we can get these airplanes to be able to operate beyond that. Basically, they're good for about an hour, of flying time, and then probably several hours to recharge. So there are obviously limitations, just like there are with an electric car. So we're hoping that all this breakthrough battery stuff that will eventually find its way into into airplanes like this. And they're not the only one. There are other. There's a company just about 500 miles from us over in Denver that's really doing some serious work on building electric aircraft that have performance closer to what you would expect from a training aircraft, like from Beech or from come on, Bill, Cessna and those guys, well, Piper and so on.
Okay. Well, I wanted to go ahead and get moving along to
let's
some
move.
other articles. So we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Though, I hope.
No, I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there'll be more news. So my next one I'm going to cover is Hyundai announces that their U.S. Ioniq EV sales increased 40% in February. That's a pretty big jump, because I brought up last week, we were talking about how Hyundai, being the number 2 player in the U.S. market, has been gaining some traction in the EVs. And the big advantage they've had is that their EVs don't look ugly. They actually look like somebody might be happy to be seen driving.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, the one you're showing there, I think, is some of the most beautiful out there. But can I share one more story?
Sure.
So I popped into Trader Joe's to do a little shopping late last week, and or was it early this? No, it was late last week. And there's a brand new Ioniq 5 that I park right next to, and the lady's still in there talking to somebody, on the phone. So I wait and tap on the window, and we strike up a conversation. And they had originally had a Subaru. And it was time. They're getting miles up on the Subaru. They decided they're going to change. What did they get? They got a brand new, 2023 Ioniq 5, and they really like it. So, yeah. So we've even got one of those running around Omaha now.
Well, I've seen them here, but it's usually got out-of-state tags.
Yeah.
So because for a long time, the Ioniq was only sold in California. So that was one of the challenges with them.
I suspect, because I don't think there is, I don't know if there's a Hyundai dealer down in Lincoln. She said they bought it, they found it in Lincoln. Now there is a company in Lincoln that makes it a practice to find pre-owned EVs and offer those for sale in Lincoln. So I'm wondering if that might be where they bought it. They got it from the that dealer down in Lincoln remember the guy that we interviewed out of Salt Lake City?
Right.
I think Salt Lake. Yeah, well, there's a company here in Omaha or in Lincoln that does something similar. So I'm suspecting that they may have bought that vehicle from him. So it could have come out of California, and like my Fiat, I got it out of California.
So I need to probably get the video of his Cybertron styled Cybertruck. So they did a whole wrap. It looks really good, and they put purple lighting under it. So they put some ground effect lighting on it.
Wow!
And it's got a really nice look to it. It is certainly the nicest looking Cybertruck wrap I've seen yet.
Yeah, it could be mistaken for a UFO going down the road.
There you go. Well, certainly in Nevada.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. So Hyundai posted that their total Ioniq family, which includes the Ioniq 5 and 6 and the Kona Electric, was up 3,000 units from a year earlier. So that's a 40% increase. So once again, EV sales are dying, and
yes, right. Yeah,
they're dying while they're increasing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So they're advancing while retreating.
Yeah, I posted an article, and I sometimes, I get so many articles, I just post them, then I come back and read them later. Well, this one basically says that, no, they're not dying. The market is just complicated. So I got to figure out what they mean by complicated, but that's in the RSS stream.
The thing is, we see that the prices of used EVs, they're not holding value, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that the whole used car space during COVID shot up out of sight because there was all these supply chain problems. New cars weren't available. in the same amount, and used car pricing just went up like crazy. And now what's happened is, as battery prices are crashing, we see Tesla and BYD getting super aggressive in pricing.
Yep.
And so what it's done is it's slashed the value of their used cars
Yep.
on the market. And while we don't have BYD here in the United States, but those two companies are aggressively,
Driving the rest of the market.
yeah, well, and they're aggressively pushing other players that are weaker players. They're going to push them out of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're doing some very aggressive tactics to gain market share, but they're capable because they were designed as EV manufacturers from the start. They're profitable on every car they sell, and it makes it interesting because they're not dealing with the same issues of, say, a Ford and GM trying to figure out how to make an EV and make it profitably, and which they haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
Or Rivian or Lucid for that matter. And their Lucid loses all kinds of money for every vehicle they sell.
Well, Rivian's not doing so good either. So
no, Rivian is really propped up by the Amazon vans. They make money on the Amazon vans and not on truck. I saw an R1S. Was it Sunday? I saw somebody parked at West Side School.
I actually saw a couple of them driving around over the weekend. So yeah, in fact, that same parking lot where the Ioniq 5 was parked at Trader Joe's, just down the bay a little bit was the SUV version. The
R1S. So my next story is about Volkswagen and Renault they may partner on a low-cost battery electric vehicle mini car. And they're looking at putting something so that they'll be not outdone by BYD and Tesla. They're looking at a sub 20,000 euro vehicle. Renault is eyeing a 2026 launch for their fully electric mini car called the Twingo, with a price below 20,000 euros. That's still a couple of years out. But the two of them are looking at doing something together that may be even cheaper. Stellantis just launched a sub 25,000 euro EV, the Citroen EC3. And they're going to have a short range version to come in at 20,000 euros.
I'm gonna log off for a moment because I just got an alert my battery's dying.
Okay.
And I didn't bring my charger down, so I'm gonna log me out momentarily, and I'll be back.
Okay, no problem. Anyways, so this isn't the first time European automakers have collaborated on mini cars. Toyota did this with Peugeot and Citroen back, and they did the Aygo Peugeot 108 and the Citroen C1 mini car, and Ford paired with Fiat to make the second generation Ka, or KA, on the Fiat 500 platform. So let's see here. Now, one of the things that I found very interesting that was in today's news was a survey says 3 out of 5 EV drivers that have home charging, these EV drivers with home charging, still use public chargers every week. Now, one of the things is a very large portion of those were people that had EV charging at work. So when they're saying public chargers, they charged when they were at the office. So about 40% of those were people charging at the office instead. The results come from a periodic public charging survey released last week. Charge Lab provides an operating system for EV chargers built for the Open Charge protocol, and it's based on a poll of 500 EV drivers in the US in the fourth quarter of 2023. Now, the only thing that's about that might be a little different is that those people are probably on the CCS network, I would assume. I don't know if it really gets into this as opposed to the NACS network, which is what the Teslas use. But across all use cases, more than half of EV drivers are found to use public chargers every week. 31% of the EV drivers that surveyed use a public station a few times a week, while 22% use one most days, which really, when we see the average EV is driven less than the average gas car. So what was it? It was like 7,000 versus 9,000 miles annually,
Yeah.
something along those lines. So that really seems hard to imagine why somebody would be charging most days unless they have a level 1 or level 2 charger at work and they're getting free charging.
Exactly. So which would you like to do? Pay for your charging from your own home utility bill, or pay as a let's say a benefit that your company's giving you and
Right.
charging there. So yeah,
I suspect that's probably the greater proportion of that, of what's going on. So let's talk about fruit peels.
yeah.
So we don't really ever talk about fruit on the show. And so that might be a real change of pace
Yeah,
because
fruit and
now we
tea
didn't talk about
leaf.
fruit yesterday. I talked about Apple. So Apple,
Right. Well, hey,
discontinued their EV project.
right in. Okay. So apparently in Nantan University in Singapore has found that they can take the citric acid that is found in fruit peels, like oranges, things like that. And the article does not explain exactly how they do it, but apparently they found a way to use that citric acid to, maybe the best word is to leach out the rare metals out of batteries to be recycled. So again, and I can understand why this is proprietary information, and we're not going to tell anybody, how we do this. But apparently, there's a way to take all those, used lemon and lime and orange and grapefruit and any other citric thing, pull that acid out of it and use that acid then to extract rare earth metals out of batteries that are being recycled, which is
Well, that's
kind
good
of
because
cool.
people are worried about fruit peels being in landfills. And so if we can keep the fruit peels out of landfills, that would be good when we put them in something useful.
Exactly. And then speaking of waste, then you can take the waste stems from tea leaves and you can use those. You can take, and I guess probably through pyrolysis or something like that, they're able to carbonize them and use that as part of the electrode in batteries. And in this particular case, this is apparently sodium ion batteries. So they're using carbonized tea leaf stems, the waste from the product of making tea, to basically incorporate recyclable materials and so on into the, if you will, next generation battery, the sodium ion batteries. So we got orange peels and tea leaves. I couldn't think of a more interesting matchup for battery development, which is kind of fun.
So I got something else interesting for you we've been talking about fruit and we're talking about Apple, and there's in the stock market, you have a few really big companies, and one of the companies that's really gotten big recently in terms of market cap is Nvidia, and Nvidia has gotten really big because of AI. And what's kind of fascinating is Elon Musk came out and said we're on the verge of the biggest tech revolution with AI, but there won't be enough power by 2025. We're talking next year. He's saying that we're going to have too much demand from computers to be pulling down information because people are using and adopting AI so much. It doesn't really get into a deep dive or anything on this, but it says that artificial intelligence computing coming online appears to be increasing by a factor of 10 every 6 months. That's huge. Obviously, that cannot continue at such a high rate forever, or it'll exceed the mass of the universe. But I've never seen anything like it. The chip rush is bigger than any gold rush that's ever existed. And I've been watching some stocks like Nvidia, Super Microcomputer. They've been just blasting. in terms of the returns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super micros quadrupled in the past year. I think that, or maybe they 8x'd in the past year. I
Yeah.
think
They've
NVIDIA has
done
done
really
something
well. Yeah.
similar. And it's very interesting to see. And he also said, I think we're really on the edge of probably the biggest tech revolution that has ever existed. There's supposedly a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. I use this all the time, by the way. Well, we live in the most interesting of times. For a while, it was making me a bit depressed, frankly. I was like, well, will they take over? Will we be useless? And it's very interesting. It's
Been
like,
a few scenarios on movies to that effect.
right, there sure have. Yeah. And I remember some of the first security robots I ever saw. They had problems with them, like going down stairwells and stuff like that. My robot I have here at my house, I've had it accidentally take the stairs before. It was it's trying to clean the stairs, but
Yeah.
it did it really rapidly.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting. It doesn't talk about any solutions, but
Well, when you see what's happening, this I kind of looking at it from the software side, right? So you've got AI programs now that will create whole movies for you. They write the script, they create the characters, they set up the scenes, they do the animation. You know, that obviously that's not available yet, but that's come. Well, how much horsepower? Pardon the expression. How much computing power? How much electricity? We worry about Bitcoin. You know,
it's not even in the same. We're not even talking in the same realm.
not even in this. So I don't know. It's interesting. There's another article too that is just I posted ahead of that particular one on Musk that basically is saying the same thing. Where's all the energy going to come from?
So I got
I don't
another.
have an answer because we want airplanes to be electric and we want all our cars to be electric. And I don't know if you saw this, but apparently the gas stoves generate 10 times the amount of particulate matter in a house than does an internal combustion engine car.
Oh wow!
So we've got these gas. Everybody's putting in gas stoves. I mean, my daughter's got one. So we want everything to become electrified and things. Well, what happens, when the machines decide that they're more relevant than, running our heat pump or charging my electric bike?
Well, I had one big article I wanted to talk a little bit. It had to do with Mack Trucks. So Mack Trucks has been working on big rig EVs, and we've seen some examples. Like we talked about that Norwegian snowplow that had the 1,000 kilowatt-hour battery that they were using to power mountain passes and things like that. That was a semi tractor with a snowplow on the front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty interesting. But this article, comes to us from CNBC. And let me see if I can share screen here. But let's see.
By the way, while you're looking that up, I'd like to thank Captain Curious and Paul Matthews for commenting in the comments section. I was going to try to respond, but I can't find where to respond. So we'll cover it later. So guys, thanks for being in the chat. We appreciate it.
Yep. And let's see. For century-old Mack trucks, the 18-wheel Bulldog big rig future is still going to be EV. Now, this is a challenge because right now there's been a lot of more adoption of EV trucks than I think people realize. Because we all know about Tesla doing shipping Pepsi products around California. That's been a big pilot project. And there's certainly some limitations. Right now, you'd be kind of silly to be trying to take one of those cross country because there's no place to charge them yet. That's changing. That's going to change. It's coming. But it's going to take a lot longer to do the interstate trade with these than than it is with
It's
passenger
local
cars and all that.
flavor of your Pepsis and your,
Right,
that class
right.
of people.
But as
So,
far as localized delivery and other uses,
yep.
I thought this was kind of interesting. So they actually are making a heavy duty garbage truck. Now, I've tried to look at this, and I was under the impression that garbage trucks were so heavy and moved so slow that there was a challenge in getting them much range because of how they operate and the fact that you got to have the compactor in the back
Mhm.
doing certain things. There's a lot of other pieces to that puzzle other than just driving down the road. They're using energy for a lot of things. Mack Trucks was founded in 1900 in Brooklyn. Wow. That's amazing to think that they've been making vehicles for 124 years.
Yeah, yeah. Only was it trucks or was it wagons
Well,
followed?
it was probably wagons to start with.
Yeah.
Headquartered in Greensboro, North Carolina, part of Sweden's Volvo Group. Oh, that it's Volvo Trucks unit, which produced its own brand of EVs for U.S. and overseas markets. Mack took 124 orders for BEVs last year, up from 44 the year before, which was a 200% increase. Although what was more interesting about this article was some of the statistics that started coming up in here. U.S. consumers bought or leased 1.2 million EVs in 2023, a year-over-year growth of 46%, and raising the market share of EVs from 7.6% from 5.9%. Now, it's expected that they'll hit 1.5 million this year, or 36% higher than last year. But what I was really interested in was the big trucks. So sales of medium and heavy duty trucks, which are only about 5% of the vehicles on the road, were up as well. So this isn't electric, this is all trucks. 507,000 sold in 23, which was a 7.6% increase from 2022. Now, part of that has to do with the economy because there's been a big demand, bigger demand for shipping goods and things like that. So there's more demand for vehicles.
Bidenomics at work.
Well, however you want to take it, right? So the upfront EV cost of an EV is comparatively higher than an ICE. So individual companies have to gauge how quickly the lower operating costs will reap a payback. I'm not really sure if that's true because right now there's so many incentives. I mean, some states alone have as much as a 40% rebate on adopting
commercial trucks.
Yeah. And it is one thing, somebody in the chat, garbage trucks have a fixed route. What if they can just be like charged? Well, I think there's something to that, but even still, I don't think that whole process is terribly energy inefficient, regardless of whether it's running on diesel or it's running, on electric. It's just they're not energy efficient vehicles by any stretch, just because of how many processes are going on at the same time. But what I wanted to get to is where it had the statistics on actual commercial EVs here.
God, that's a long article.
Yeah, it was bigger than I kind of thought when I was looking at it. So, here it was. So in 2020, the total number in 2020, 80 EV truck deployments were cataloged. This is for the United States. So 80, only 80.
80, okay.
In 2020. And in 2022, so 2 years later, that jumped to 1,948. So
now is this Mack or is this all trucks?
So this is the whole country. So this is all brands. This would include Tesla, Freightliner, anybody else. There's a lot of companies. There's way more companies in the commercial space. We had that gentleman on that was in the commercial fleet leasing, and you saw his catalog of all the different
Yeah,
EVs
bunch
they
of
had
them.
available commercially. There was like 30 or 40 different vehicles. A lot of them I'd never seen before, brands I didn't even realize had something in the EV space. So there's a lot of people making something. It's just a matter of if it's in there. But 2020, so just under 2,000 in 2022, 2023, it jumped to 10,000. So it went up 5x in 1 year.
Wow.
And but the total number running, well, this included some class 2 EVs, which includes Amazon. So I'm going to tell you that out of those vehicles, the majority of that was probably just Amazon, because Amazon deployed a lot of Rivian trucks. I think they've
Yep.
deployed almost 10,000 themselves. So out of those about 13,000 that have been deployed in those years, 10,000 of those were probably Amazon.
Yeah.
But that's still a pretty big deal. We see more and more coming out into the marketplace. And I have other things I'd like to cover, but we're out of time.
Really long on time. So yeah.
I know. Yeah. So I went over just for being able to trim this for other repurposing.
Right.
It's we're getting a little too long in the tooth. So anyways, folks, we appreciate, folks in the chat. And
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys.
if you like this, please help us out by sharing this somewhere. It really helps us.
And the thumbs up and, all that good
all,
stuff.
all that helps. All right. Anyways, Bill, thanks again, as always.
My pleasure.
We'll be
Sorry
back
for
on
the
Thursday.
technical issues. So we'll get them
No
worked
problem.
out.